Hello and welcome to the Snark Industries podcast. A quick note before we start. This one's a bit out of order. Either we missed it or it came out after we had already passed this point in the timeline. Either way, we're slotting it in now. If you're hearing this, you're listening live or close, and we appreciate you more than we could possibly tell you. This bumper comes down in about a week. After that, it lives in its proper spot like nothing ever happened. Again, thank you so much for being here for the messy part.
Hello and welcome, fellow Marvel fans, to the Snark Industries podcast. I'm John.
And I'm Remy.
And we invite you to join us as we work our way through every Marvel TV show, movie, and crossover. Meaning if there's a Marvel character on screen, it's fair game. All categorized in the temporal order of their setting. By the time we're done, we'll have built a complete start-to-finish timeline of the entire Marvel Cinematic Universe. To accomplish this goal and to have a bit of fun along the way, each episode will be split into two parts, the watch party and the deep dive. If you're hearing this, you found one of our deep dives. This is where we slow things down and take a more pragmatic, in-depth look at a piece of Marvel media. We'll walk through the full plot, explore connections to the wider MCU and Marvel Comics, highlight Easter eggs, unpack lore, and of course, give you our own personal thoughts and feelings. Although this episode stands on its own, it is designed to complement the watch party. So, if you haven't watched along with us yet, we highly recommend starting there first and coming back here for the full breakdown. Most importantly, we want to thank each and every one of you for joining us on this incredible journey. We're not affiliated with Marvel in any way, shape, or form. We're just fans who are passionate about these stories and these characters and wish to share them with everyone in a new and exciting way. So, sit back, relax, and enjoy this episode of Snark Industries.
Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the deep dive for Snark Industries. We just got finished watching Thor, Tales of Asgard. John, what was that about?
All right, so we get to see younger, teenage, dare I say, versions of some sort of familiar favorites to anyone who enjoys the MCU or these comics. Thor, obviously the title character, and Loki as well. The Warriors 3 and Lady Sif, all of who make appearances again in the Thor movie, the live action one that will come later in our timeline. But here we get to see some of their sort of origins,
beginnings,
in a manner of speaking. Yeah, beginnings. I mean, they're all kind of established already, and we see very early Thor, who, strangely enough, and I still have not fully over it yet, is using a sword to sort of fight in these like arena style matches. That's, you know, all just for kind of show, not really having seen any sort of real combat himself outside of these sort of staged events for crowds. The Warriors 3 are spinning fanciful, embellished tales. Loki seems to be sort of learning bits and pieces of magic from the Enchantress, which was kind of a cool to see her.
Yeah, that was an interesting drop.
Yeah, kind of see her here. I don't think we see her anywhere else, at least not in the sort of main MCU continuity, at least not as of yet. But so kind of neat to see her, though I was a little disturbed how she was kind of hitting on a teenage Loki when she did not appear to be of that young of age. I don't know.
Yeah, we don't know the age differences there.
We might need to call Chris Hansen. It's not clear yet. So anyway, but yeah, that was kind of cool to see her teaching him some magic and everything else. And ultimately we get this sort of scene where we get to see what Lady Sif is doing, who seems to be the most accomplished out of all of them at this point of their stories. She kind of does a little battle with, play battle of sorts in the stalls of the horses and Pegasuses that are there in Asgard, and smacks them around pretty good, really, with a pitchfork and a bucket of oats.
Yeah.
So we get to see these things, and Loki kind of, as Loki does, but I think in a less mischievous way and more of just a maybe supporting his brother way here.
It certainly seemed to be.
Yeah, sort of convinces Thor that he needs to be doing more real stuff, and by telling him this story about this weapon that is in Jotunheim, that we kind of learn to be the weapon of Surtur, the fire sword, death, or whatever, and does this thing. And Thor kind of goes to Odin, and I don't think really shares this necessarily, but kind of has this argument with him about how he's just doing these kind of dumb things. And so this is a trope that we get to see again later. But ultimately, between all these things kind of happening, Thor's feeling a little less than. And we all know that Thor doesn't like feeling less than. So he takes the bait of this story from Loki, and the two of them stow aboard a ship that the Warriors 3 are taking to Jotunheim for an unrelated thing? Question mark.
Supposedly. I don't think they were actually taking it to Jotunheim. I think they were just going to drink.
Yeah. So that's the story they were telling. Yeah, I guess that kind of checks out with how they're how they're telling these embellished tales. So they're saying they're going to Jotunheim, but in reality they're going to just waste time. But if it was planned to make another stop or not, unclear, because when they get to the bar, this sort of whole thing sort of unleashes into a barroom brawl as Thor is there. And Loki ultimately uses a little bit of one of the spells he's learned from the Enchantress to splash some water on Fenris, who wasn't like Fenris and wasn't how Fenris should have been, but looked more like a werewolf, which was kind of strange. And they kind of have this big barroom brawl. And I mean, this bar that they went to is left in shambles. And so they load up aboard the boat and decide, why not go to Jotunheim? And
why not?
Yeah, why not us? And so they do so and everything else. And we see them kind of get there. They're pushing through the Jotunheim tundra. And they, we see, which is kind of a cool nod that, all the Warriors 3 and Thor and Loki are all there. And, the 4 that we know as Asgardians are all bundled up in furs and shivering and everything else, and Loki's just casually walking along because we have the dramatic irony of knowing that it's because he's a frost giant, but they don't know that and he doesn't know that, at least at this point. So we see them kind of going and looking for this this weapon, and Thor ultimately does recall this tale that his father had told him about this battle that he did with Surtur, and is able to sort of use that tale to envision where the battle took place somehow, and also where the sword fell after somehow, because that's how that works.
Exactly.
Yeah, exactly. And they go down to this like cave system in the ice to try to locate this weapon. Meanwhile, back on Asgard, Odin is being concerned about Thor's well-being. He's not seen him in a bit. He comes to who ultimately was entrusted with this secret, a dark elf that's named Algrim, who promised Thor and Loki before they left that he would, we joked about keep their secret as long as he could, which expected him to crack immediately. And he did not actually, as Odin kind of came to him and says,
I was impressed.
Where are they at? And what's going on? I don't know, kids, am I right? And, that's kind of how that conversation went. So kind of an interesting thing in this character that we have in Algrim here that seems to be on these guys' side and is kind of described to be Thor's like mentor, teacher, instructor throughout the years. Clearly someone who's been a part of his life for a long time, because even though these are teenage versions of these characters, they're teenagers by Asgardian standards, which I still feel is several hundred years old. But, because I believe in MCU continuity, Thor says he's around the 1,500-year-old range in the happenings of the live action movies. So that's kind of how I put it together in terms of how old they would be in our years. But
where the time frame is. Sure.
Yeah, still teenagers in their years, and obviously this Algrim fellow has been along for a lot of this. So we kind of set in this scene of this concern that's happening as they're all building up. We cut back over to Jotunheim, and they do in fact find the Sword of Surtur. How cool! And they knock it out of the frozen icicle with a morning star, an almost dawn star, as you called it, and it begins to, glow this bright fire. And this sword is, 4 times longer than any of them are tall, kind of thing. And fortunately, this particular sword is magical in nature, and you can just walk up to it, and when you try to grab it just goes and fits in your hand. It's really it's a good feature. So that's what we're saying. So this thing shrinks down to fit in Thor's hand, and as he shoves it into his scabbard, the flames that were erupting from all around the blade dissipate, and it is safely tucked away there somehow. Best not to question the official story. That's what's going on. So as they're doing this and kind of moving through the wilderness, somewhere along the line, they had also been attacked by came across, this group of like little ice sprites. It was kind of a weird thing. Like, they didn't do anything, but they plucked a piece of one of their clothes off and took it to this group of frost giants that are clearly some kind of scouting party.
Yeah.
One of them has a sled with a couple of polar bears to pull it around. The rest of them just had to walk. I guess they drew short straws that day. And so they give this thing there. They hand this little piece of clothes over to these frost giants, and the polar bears give it a sniff. And 30 seconds later, they found them all. So then we have this sort of big chase scene as they're all trying to get away from these guys. And as they cross the bridge over Khazad-dûm, we have...
Well, actually, sorry to interrupt, but the distance that the bridge went down now makes sense now that we know it's on the tree.
That's true. Yeah. If that's the bridge that's going over. Yeah, that did make sense.
Crazy
I thought it was wild, but yeah, we did figure out and were confused in the watch party, which luckily we did figure it out that this bridge actually was one of the bridges between worlds, which is how they kind of set up how Yggdrasil, the tree of the world tree, works here is that, these realms are connected by literal bridge. So they do start running across it. A couple of the frost giants that looked like statues, and you were convinced that they were, but I knew better somehow. I just had a sense, and they broke out of the ice. And so they're all kind of doing this thing. And it looks like for a second that Loki is falling behind, that he's going to be caught, captured, hurt, injured, killed by these things. And so what's a young budding god of thunder to do other than draw the sword of Surtur and be like, I don't want to hurt you.
The god of fire.
Yeah, as he, holds the sword out at him and claims innocence. And, the frost giants, being frost giants, I suppose, decide to not heed those words and come at him. And he points the sword at him, and this big gout of flame shoots out and disintegrates them instantly, as well as half of the bridge. And they all get away from there to apparently another realm that has the Valkyries, who are not part of the Asgardian kingdom in this tale.
Yeah, that was weird.
Which was strange to me. I don't know if that's got any sort of roots, so maybe perhaps in a run that I'm not aware of. But for this tale, it seemed like that's where they were going. This group of Valkyries led by Brunhilde, which is a hilarious name. And it appears that Lady Sif, is being an aspiring Valkyrie herself at this point of her tale, was there. And as the Thor and the others get there, Thor himself kind of is the only one able to, not really clear, scale the sort of outer wall of the realm.
Yeah. And
gets up there, and they're all naked in a pool taking a bath. And it's just a kind of a strange way to introduce everybody like that. But
it was a little strange.
He comes to Sif, and the idea is like, hey, give us some horses so we can go back home. I've got this sword, and it's cool. I'm going to go give it to Odin, and everything's going to be fine. Everything's fine. And immediately all the women are suddenly dressed and attacked, and knock Thor out pretty immediately and put him in chains. We see him wake up sometime later, obviously, from that. And everyone's kind of like, you have this sword. You're a man. You're bad. And it's whatever. And you expect everyone to kind of, well, I've got allies with me. And then, the Warriors 3 come dangling down from a chain because they also have been captured somehow during this time. But we don't see Loki, at least as not of yet, because he's being Loki and doing sneaky stuff. And he runs in and grabs a sword and is like, look at this, and he's going to use it on these Valkyries for some reason, even though they're supposed to be on the same side, but they're not here.
Confused by that.
Very confusing. But ultimately, Thor's like, no, don't do it. We're good guys. We're not here to kill all the Valkyries. And so they don't. And as all this is happening, the Frost Giants back on Jotunheim have gone back to their king. They, apparently this sword is somehow very important to them. The most important thing ever. And so they're ready to go to war. Yeah, not really clear, but I guess they don't want Odin to have it. I don't know. But at the very least,
would make sense.
The two sort of guards that got disintegrated by Thor's actions, although he didn't, I don't think really mean to kill them like that.
No,
he did swing the sword, but I don't think he knew that it would just, shoot a laser of fire at everybody. Yeah. So, they're ready to go to war. So we've got two sets. We got a one party that shows up at the Valkyries area and, sort of attacks them as all this is kind of going down. Luckily, between everything that's sort of played out, Thor is freed by his own strength, ripping these chains out of the ground. And, passing by, Frost Giant, knocks down a teetering Warriors 3, and Lady Sif is there too, helping in some way. And there's a big one, and he's super scary until his polar bear inexplicably knocks him off the top of the thing, and he just falls into his doom. And then these Warriors 3, snapping from their chain or whatever, their rope that they were dangling from, falls on its head and immediately knocks us out. And they just decide that they're going to take his teeth. I don't know. It was.
So that poor thing's gonna wake up. It's horrible.
Yeah, toothless. Yeah, that's what's gonna happen. That's the new Toothless. This is not How to Train Your Dragon, but we have a new Toothless. So all this is kind of happening, and that, as that kind of folds up, they, the Warriors 3, Loki, Thor, and Lady Sif do get their horses. She's basically kicked out of the training program by Broomhilda because she's helping the stinky men or whatever, even though they just totally saved her. It's very weird. But they do give her the horses, the Pegasus, to get out of there and get back to Asgard, which is good timing because meanwhile, back there, the king and the rest of the Frost Giant army has showed up at Asgard Steppe that was basically like, hey, give us a sword back or we're going to attack Asgard. And then they all stood there and pouted for a little while. But of course, we know that the sword isn't there. So Odin sends off a small group of warriors as well as this Algrim for some reason to go and find Thor and the sword to be able to bring it back. And he, I guess is just counting on that. His planning, his all-father planning didn't seem very all-fathery, I tell you.
Yeah.
And so as this is kind of going down, doesn't seem to be overly prepared. Eventually, they do kind of get back, and as they stop to, I guess, give the Pegasuses a rest, they're drinking in a pool. This contingent led by Algrim or joined by Algrim does find Thor and the others. Algrim comes up to him and says, hey, we're here to get the sword. This is important. The Frost Giants are, going to attack Asgard if we don't give it to them. So Thor's like, hey, this is a evil thing. It's a terrible thing. We can't just give it away. We've got to keep it safe. And, hands it over to his mentor and instructor, who immediately takes it and says, actually, your dad made all my people die. And I've just been sitting on this secret forever. And so I'm a bad guy now. And he draws the sword out and kills all the Asgardians that are there, except for the main ones that we've been talking about. And naturally. Yeah, of course, as one does when they've been a secret bad guy. When they've been a secret bad guy this whole time. And so he, then takes one of the horses, one of the Pegasus, and says, effectively like, hey, if you come back to Asgard, I'm going to kill you, but I'm going to go kill your daddy because he's the worst. Which, I mean, fair. So,
we've seen Odin a lot of times, and it's hard to argue.
Yeah, he makes some very questionable decisions for sure. And so he shows up there, and we see Odin kind of back in this armory, I suppose, that Thor was in before, which he once again didn't choose a hammer, even though Mjolnir was totally there. He got another sword. That's neither here nor there. But Gungnir is there, and then so he's there. Odin's there as well as this Algrim guy, and they kind of have this sort of epic battle. And Odin's really getting his butt kicked, which was shocking to me in a way. I guess that just shows you the power of this blade.
I mean, it's the blade that brings Ragnarok.
It's holding up to the hype, at least in this showing.
Right.
And meanwhile, the Frost Giants are attacking Asgard, who, as I said before, Odin didn't seem to prepare them for whatsoever. There were a few kind of guards on the wall, but everyone else was just at home. Like we saw people like eating dinner and just normal stuff, even though there was an entire Jotun army at the gates. Like, I don't know, just very, very strange.
I'd be a bit more concerned.
Yeah, as would I. So as all this is happening, we have Thor and the others finally get here. That they're down one Pegasus, but it's okay because Loki's real small and can ride on somebody else's horse, and it's not a problem. So they all kind of show up. Thor and Loki decide to split off from the rest of the group and go try to find Odin, while the rest of them try to turn the tide of this battle with the Frost Giants. Okay, great. So Thor shows up after Odin's already beaten down. We see his eye damaged in this battle, although he doesn't get his patch.
Yeah,
at least yet. It appears that this is the setup for Odin's single-eyedness in the future. Thor, grabbing Gungnir, does battle with this Algrim, and we have some really actually pretty cool scenes. Apparently the blade of Surtur takes all the flames out of the room, and then he sheathes it so it's real dark in there. It's kind of running around. It's very, 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 very cool. It's a very, very well choreographed, very well put together sort of fight scene. And finally, Thor's doing some Thor type stuff, even though still without. Yeah, finally. I mean, the whole time he's just been this mook. It's been awful. But ultimately, Algrim goes kind of running across the floor, and very, very awesomely, Thor hucks Gungnir at him, sticks him against the wall.
Oh, it's so good.
Goes and picks up the Sword of Surtur, puts it back away, and says, I can't, turn my back on all these years that we've been friends, even though you've suddenly became this bad guy, just ruined everything in the last 20 minutes. I can't do it. And then Loki walks up immediately, grabs the sword, just kills him. which seems on brand, to be fair. I mean,
totally.
And so with that, Thor says, "Hey, it's all right, bro. We're cool."
Mm-hmm.
He was kind of a bad guy anyway. I couldn't do it, but I'm glad you did it. So, give me that sword. I'm going to go take it to the Frost Giant so we can stop this war. And so he gets in his chariot with Tooth Grinder and Tooth Gnasher at the helm. And you think we're going to have this big, epic, cool Thor thing. And he rides out there and they immediately just jumps out of it and then goes through all of the Frost Giants.
It gets smashed.
It gets smashed, yeah. But he all the other Frost Giants just stand there and watch. And he goes up to the king and he's like, "I'm going to give you this and myself as a prisoner if you stop this." And the king is like,
"All right,
okay,
sure, why not?"
And then his son is like, "Wait, we're almost about to take over the city." And he's like, "Well, And so there's a get ready to leave. Thor's like, "All right, I guess I'm going for mine. I guess I'm going for my imprisonment now since I offered it." And the guy's like, "No, just go take care of your dad. It's fine." And then they just leave. very, very sort of anticlimactic ending to this big war that they were, hiked across the realms to do. But that's what they did. And then as things end, we kind of see everybody kind of, being able to regale people with real tales. The Warriors 3 and Lady Sif is there and, goes and plays tonsil hockey with Thor this time instead of having a real fight, which, it is interesting. Yeah, you definitely kind of see that sort of connection there in the future, though they abandon it completely when that time comes for somebody else. But we'll get there when we get there.
Yeah, we will.
And Odin is recovering in his bed and everything seems to be okay, and basically tells Thor he's done a good job, which was off-putting a little bit to see good dad Odin, but we did get a little piece of that. And
good dad and Odin saying good job, even though he started a war, killed a couple people, destroyed a bar.
Well, listen, we're not keeping track of all the thing. Yeah, right. So, we kind of have this set up and finally our last character, we have Loki, who is sort of proudly sitting in a chair. We see him sort of conjure this same water snake that he learned from the Enchantress earlier in the film. And he breathes ice on it and makes it go icy, which makes me feel like maybe he's at least starting to suspect, though he doesn't seem to know later either. So maybe he just thinks that he's got cool ice powers. Tough to say, but he does do that. And, with that, the film kind of ends. And that's the tale of Asgard that we got in our first installment of what is known as the Yost verse series of animated stuff, which is kind of a cool thing. This is actually the first time that I've seen this specific film, but I've seen a lot of the other ones and a lot of the TV shows that came from this Earth designation. But we'll get to that when we get to sort of some comic book tie-ins and stuff. But in terms of MCU tie-ins, it's actually more rich with MCU tie-ins than I would have expected from an animated film. I made the comment when we were doing the watch party. I was like, "Oh, it's Feige." I didn't realize that he was involved in this, but he was. And it's very clear that having these same characters that are in the first Thor film and everything else, this was intentional and meant to be part of it. So even though it actually does have a different Earth designation as everything else, I think that it actually, in a quite literal sense, ties in directly with Thor's story. So we have the characters, we have the sort of basis of who they are and where they're coming from and everything else. And obviously that grows into what we have later as the first Thor film.
Yep.
So pretty heavy tie-ins in that sense. Like I said, we do see Mjolnir, it's already there, even though he doesn't use it. We do see I said Odin and Thor and Loki and the Warriors 3 and Lady Sif. And even though there's some other things that were added in, and as I said, I really liked Valkyries being more of a group of people rather than just a single person.
That was interesting.
Yeah, and everything else. And, they had the Enchantress that was here, which was pretty neat and cool to put Fenris Wolf in, even though it wasn't him. So it was a little
Didn't
different.
Feel good about that one.
Yeah, it was a little different because it's interesting, to bring in something to have. Sure. And for me, like as a fan of, Thor's one of the comic books that I've read probably the most of, to have, there's callbacks like Tooth Grinder and Tooth Gnasher,
Sure. Yeah.
Obscure, they, those things were so obscure they didn't even make it until the fourth installment of the actual Thor films. We'll get to that as well too. Yeah, they just screamed a lot, which was dumb, but that whole movie was kind of dumb. But anyway,
we'll get there.
We'll get there. But lots of good lots of good MCU tie-ins.
For sure.
Just across the board, and really looking forward to seeing how this Yost verse continues to do so in the future, because this is the first installment of those things in that universe. Speaking of which, why don't you hit us with some comic book tie-ins and things like that, and talk to us more about this Yost verse and this Earth designation.
Yeah, absolutely. And the reality of this universe is 8096. That is the Yost verse, and we will see many more iterations therein, and I really look forward to it. The things that come straight out of comics, this is actually based pretty loosely on a story called Thor, Son of Asgard. That was a 2004-2005 Marvel Ages series. And it was written by Akira Yoshida, which is a pseudonym for CB. I'm going to mispronounce this and I apologize, but Cebulski. Sincerely apologize. Yeah. But it's a series that follows teenage Thor getting across Asgard with Sif and Balder, which I kind of bummed that Balder has never actually made his way into the MCU. But obviously for this film, Balder was replaced with the Warriors 3, which, funny enough, are the only real 3 characters that we see, like the core cast of Asgard. The only 3 characters that don't come from Norse mythology. So kind of an interesting fact that they're so prominent when they're kind of the only piece that didn't actually come from there. But speaking of them, they did first appear in Journey into Mystery number 119 in August 1965. So they've been around for quite a while.
Wow.
And you can really tell the time that they were made, because Fandral was based very heavily on Errol Flynn, Hogan based on Charles Bronson, and Volstagg on Shakespeare's Falstaff. If you look up pictures of these folks, they're virtually identical. It's pretty funny. But beyond that, interesting little tidbit that this film was actually made in 2009, completed and copyrighted in 2009, but didn't release until 2011 because the film was supposed to release first. Finally, Algrim. He was actually a character from the comics. He is a dark elf that is a loyal lieutenant of Malekith, which I'm sure most of us know, especially if we've watched a lot of the MCU. But he's noted for being the largest and strongest of his kind. So they took some liberties with him.
He's the diminutive guy that was in this movie. Yeah.
Yeah. So the name is certainly carried over, but I'd say that the character itself is probably not. As far as comics and Easter eggs and things like that, obviously you mentioned seeing Mjolnir. I think I saw Stormbreaker, but it clipped away too quickly. Don't take my word on that. But it was a fun little watch. What'd you think of it?
Yeah, I mean, and like I said, I mentioned kind of in the recap, this sort of universe, this Yost verse that this is a part of. I've really enjoyed a lot of those things already. I said this is the first time I've seen this one, and it didn't disappoint. I mean, it certainly had some sort of strange, I wouldn't call them flaws, but certainly some design choices that I might not necessarily agree with. Everything else, it was interesting. It was jarring to me to kind of see how the worlds were connected. As I understand
that was a little weird.
Yggdrasil is supposed to be this, all the realms are connected via this world tree, but to have just a literal bridge that you could just walk across. I mean, I don't know, like it was a little off-putting to a point where, I mean, for those that were with us during the watch party, we were genuinely confused at how they got to wherever the Valkyries were. Like, what happened? They were just in Jotunheim 30 seconds ago.
Ship.
Yeah, the ship is broken. How are they going to go? So that was kind of off-putting. They even showed when they showed the ship sailing away from Asgard in the beginning that I didn't see any bridges connecting Asgard anywhere. But then when the Frost Giants came, they just walked right up, no issue. I was just
to the front gate too.
right to the front gate. Yeah, to the front door, knocked, and everyone, Odin was like, "All right, everybody, stay in your homes. This is nothing to worry about." Until they were all getting blown up by. Yeah, keep eating your dinner. So I think to me that was the most jarring thing. But I still like the story. It was cool to kind of see these characters that Thor is one of my favorites. Just in general for Marvel.
Yeah.
So it's cool to see these characters and, see a lot of familiar tropes. It was neat to see Loki as ultimately just a through and through good guy here. I mean, he, dare I say, the best of them in terms of his decision making and what he was doing up until that time where he killed that guy. But
well, yeah, there's that.
they flippy floppied right there at the very end. As Thor's like, having this sort of like cathartic moment with Odin of like, I messed up, but I also, it's like, good job, son, and pats him on the back. And Loki sitting there pouting.
That brother of yours, though.
Yeah. Loki sitting there pouting after he just wiped away his, friend of how many ever years. But I mean, did go immediately evil, just crazily.
Sure,
which,
sure.
I kind of pride myself on being able to sort of guess how some of these things are kind of going, just everything. That took me by surprise. I was not expecting,
because there was no groundwork laid for it.
There was no groundwork at all. Yeah, I was not expecting him to be a bad guy, and this whole time, so just immediately just go, screw all you guys, I'm killing him. But even with those things, like I said, not necessarily flaws, just design choices that I wouldn't have done if it was me. Sure. I still think it was a fun watch. I would like to see Thor do more Thor stuff, but I guess that's kind of the point. He's teenage Thor, and he's not learned all this stuff yet and everything else. So. He's pretty rudimentary, and we did get to see some cool stuff with him do with gun gear at the end. So, overall, I give it a thumbs up. How about yourself?
It was fun. I have not watched as much of the Yost verse as you have. I saw Hulk versus Wolverine, but I think that's it. I think that's the only one I've actually watched. So I wasn't as pumped up for this, but it was fun. It was. Stories about teenagers are always a little annoying, just a little bit, because they do really stupid things, and it's but that's what they are. So
you heard it here first, folks. Remy hates kids.
No. But it was a fun watch. I did like seeing Loki prior to his full evil Loki version. I liked seeing Sif. I liked the Warriors 3. It was a lot of fun to see kind of their origins of their friendship, as it were. But yeah, it was a fun adventure. I did not like what they did with Fenris. It's comforting to me that this is not the main Marvel universe, because I don't want that Fenris, and it should not exist in any universe. But at least it's not in ours. But yeah, I don't particularly care for that, and I didn't care for the choice with the Valkyries. I thought that was really strange. It was very Themyscira, which has never really been their bag. But again, I don't read a lot of Thor comics, so maybe there's something I'm missing that or some part of mythology.
I do, and it was weird to me as well. So yeah, I agree. That was a strange choice, and very, very much, you said it right, a Themyscira thing. Like they were very much men bad, women good in this area kind of thing for whatever reason.
Right. So, it was, despite its flaws, it was still fun. The animation was quality enough. That last battle was rad. I really enjoyed that. The way they use the lights and everything like that. That's an episode that I'm probably going to put on my big screen and watch again because of that. All in all, thumbs up. Not the best thing we've watched to this point, but a lot of fun regardless.
Yeah, worth it.
Yeah. That being said, that's that, and I look forward to the next one.
On to the next.
Thank you for joining us in this episode of the Snark Industries podcast. To join the conversation and further explore the Marvel Cinematic Universe with us, head on over to snarkindustriespod.com. The link will be in the show notes. But with that, we will see you in the next adventure.
It's wet.